Thanks to all our analysts for joining us this morning, and thank you to our listeners as well. We have Adenike Oyetunde this morning. Adenike, morning.
Hi.
Adenike is Adenike Oyetunde on Twitter. Morning, Adenike.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank
Good
you for
morning.
having
Nice
me.
hair. You have I like your hair. Morning, Justin. So good to have you back.
Morning,
Yay!
Vegas. Good to be back.
Justin is at Justin EG on Twitter, and we have the man Cheta. Morning, Cheta.
Good morning. Can I thank one of the listeners, Harry Oko, sent me a sack of quickery.
Yes.
Is it downstairs?
I miss when it was.
Is it downstairs?
A sack of quickery. Yeah.
Many people did not say there's light
going to,
You did say there's light refreshments.
No, it's for me, just not for you. So that I'm not sharing with you.
Thank you for sending it to us.
All right, Cheta, thank you so much. Cheta is at
Two hits this
Checkster
morning.
on Twitter, and he's an excited one this morning as he has food. All right, we go on to let you know how you can be a part of the conversation this morning. Kindly send your message to WhatsApp 0809 4440981. On Twitter, we're at Smooth981FM. Kindly use the hashtag Freshly Pressed 981. On YouTube, we're streaming live. Please go on there if you'd like to see what's going on behind the scenes, and also, join the conversation as well. So YouTube is youtube.com/smooth981FM. We move on to our first story. Our first story from this morning is taken from the Punch newspaper. Lagos Print, accomplice to die for killing businesswoman.
In this story, interesting morning here. So in this story, it doesn't sound as happy as we sound. It happened in 2012. Unfortunately, the Ekon lady who was affected, according to the reports, Adewale Oyekon, sentenced to death the two accomplices for killing one Alhaja Sikirat Ekun. The accomplices, the two people, the
Yes.
two guys who killed her, were both working for her, but they were, sacked. They were fired from their jobs because of some incompetence issues and all that. And then they decided to kill the employer and bury her in a well. And even went ahead to take her phone and then lied to the family, the relatives.
Yeah.
But take us through the story, I didn't get.
I feel like pretty much none of the stories from any source has actually stated clearly what the connect of the prince is with the story. But what we know, very clearly is the fact that Prince Adewale Oyekon hired the 27-year-old Latif Balogun and paid him 6,000 naira to murder the 62-year-old Sikirat Ekon. And after murdering her, they threw her body into the well, covered it with a lot of things, gas cylinder, just covered it with stuff. And after a while, when her family members did not know about her whereabouts, then Adewale took her phone and then sent out messages to them claiming that she had gone for the Salah holiday. But they knew there was something fishy about it, and then they went to the house, and eventually well diggers found her body in there. Now, it's very necessary to note that it's taking this case about 7 years. This is the court of first instance, it's the High Court. So there is likely the probability of appeal. So it means that we'll see a progression to the Court of Appeal and maybe to the Supreme Court. That's a probability. And why this is a probability, a very high one, is because this judge of first instance has stated clearly that the prosecution, represented by Akinjo, I had to plug that in because he did a good job and I know him.
Sorry?
I had to plug his name in because he did a good job according to the judge, and I
Okay.
know him. Had mentioned that he clearly had proven the case beyond reasonable doubt. And most times when it comes to criminal cases, there must be no iota of doubt whatsoever.
Yes.
So fingers crossed, give or take, probably see another 14 years or minimum of 10 years from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. And it also raises a question of how many people do we have on the death roll in this country and how many people actually are sentenced to death, because world over people are saying, oh, no longer do this. But it just feels like justice will dispense, sadly at the expense of another person's life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adenike.
Thank you.
One of the things that frightens me in this report is the sum that the killer was paid, 6,000 naira. Reminds me of last year when this young lady was courts. She was interviewed on channels. Miriam Abiola, age 20. She used to do contract killing for 10,000 naira. If the value of human life is worth 6,000 naira in 2012 was what, $40. If that is the value of human life in this country, then all of us should be very frightened.
Absolutely.
That's right. Emma from Akoka actually says, in literal terms, we can call this poetic justice. This story should be a normal story, but the context is what really makes it news. When the law actually applies the sacred cows, a prince who does not act royal should not be called the king's son.
I think when it's a case like this of murder, it's not normal practice. We still report it.
Yeah.
Last week we talked about
it's and what's striking is the fact that it's usually the domestics, and which raises a lot of questions. How much security can you put up to yourself and your loved ones? Your driver, your nanny, these people know too much for us not to care for them. But then you realize that even the ones that are properly cared for still go ahead and do. So you really don't know.
Last week we had the mask MD's wife murdered because his salary, or because
he had asked for money and he turned him down.
Dayo Adeleke, remember, about 2 years ago, was also killed by domestic staff for not giving an advance salary to her domestic staff. So it's important that we realize these things. It's not. It should never become normal. We should talk about them and find out why it's happening and how we can stop it from happening.
And then discretion, issues of discretion in terms of what kind of information we should keep away from certain people. Anyway, let's move on to talk about this next story here from New Telegraph. Justin, so glad to have you back. Court orders oil well transfer from Bayelsa to River State. So there was a controversy, surrounding what should form the border between Rivers and Bayelsa states, between two rivers. The bone of contention here has been the Soku oil wells and fields located in Akukutor local government area of River State. But it seems like the court judgment was in favor of Rivers. Please take us through this story.
Okay, it's good to be back on air. Substance of the story. So this harks back to the Jonathan administration. For those who might remember, in the heat of the Amechi versus Jonathan kerfuffle,
That's a big word.
Well, I watch a lot of CNN, and in the recent few weeks, I had a lot of time on my hands to do that. Okay, so there was this rougher fight. Back to the real thing. There was this rougher fight between Amechi and the governor of River State at the time, and former President Jonathan. Yeah. And as we all know, when you fight with the big dogs in these parts, there are consequences and there are repercussions. And this was one of the fallouts of that. So what had happened was, so I grew up in Port Harcourt. I was born and raised in River State, right? Soku had always been a part of River State. Always. The oil wells in Soku were always part of River State, and the revenues from those wells, from the 13% derivation perspective, always accrued to River State. But somehow, miraculously, in 2002, the National Boundary Commission made a mistake in its published administrative map on Nigeria and slightly shifted the boundary between Rivers and Bayelsa states such that the Soku oil wells suddenly, became part of Bayelsa State. And then the masterstroke was they made a mistake, admitted to the mistake, and refused to correct the mistake. So immediately it was done in 2002. They wrote a letter saying, "Oh, there's this mistake. Oh, we've seen it. Oh." And then, of course, River State went to court, got a court judgment, and the court declared, Supreme Court, by the way, hey, that's wrong. Correct it. They say, yeah, we see that it's wrong. Okay, no problem. But nobody did anything.
Thank you.
But from the RMAFC, the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission, the 13% portion of funds suddenly moved from River State to Bayelsa State. And everybody was just looking at this problem. So what has happened now is, of course, power has changed hands. Power is transient. Be careful what you do when you're in power. Power has changed hands, and now suddenly what should have been done a long time ago has been done. Now, this for me signals the weakness in our judiciary. right? And the basic fragility of our political ecosystem. What is right is never right on its own merit. It's right or wrong depending on who is involved and whose ox is God. And that is really not the way to go. But hey, at the end of the day, something to celebrate. Something right has been done. But my angst is you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons. There's no reason why this stayed for as many years as it stayed. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. Now, the judiciary could have issued a bench warrant for the head of that agency who refused to correct the map, right? But we have political protections. And unfortunately, because of its dalliances with the political class, the judiciary is suffering what it's suffering today. It's sad. Well, congratulations to Rivers State.
Thank you, Justin. Just worthy of note that the accurate or the real boundary is River Santa Barbara instead of the one that was mistakenly put as St. Bartholomew River. That's the boundary between rivers and Ambassador.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Cheta, I'll come to you for the next story. 1 million light weapons circulating in Nigeria, says the National Security Advisor. Very worrying news here. I stated this yesterday that of the 857 million small and light weapons in circulation globally and the 12 billion rounds of ammunition produced annually, 10 million are estimated to be in Africa, with 1 million of them circulating in Nigeria. So we have 10% of the arms circulating in Nigeria. Please take us to this story, Cheta.
You know what's so worrying about that? We have 20% of the population of Africa. So it's in 2007, I think, there was a UN report that said that we had 35 million small arms circulating in Nigeria. So this is a downward revision. It's a relief, actually.
Okay.
Having said that, the real truth is that nobody knows precisely the number of small arms and light weapons that we have. For the records, it's important that people know that things like your Kalashnikov is classified as small arm and light weapon. You start getting into heavy weapons when you have all the Gatlings and all those really the ones that you cannot carry. So the thing that the NSA's reports focused on, the problem is I didn't focus on the real cause of this problem. The politicians who are importing these weapons. The politicians import these weapons to use them for nefarious activities during the elections, and then they fail to retrieve them afterwards. So these weapons now get into circulation and get turned on the populace. And for example, Premium Times this year has done at least 3 stories complete with documentation showing how the former governor of Ogun State, Ibikunle Amosun, illegally imported over 1,000 Kalashnikov rifles and more than 2 million rounds of ammunition. As far as I know, and I may be wrong, he hasn't even been brought in for questioning, talk less of being investigated. So here you have an investigative paper doing a report, putting bodies on the line for it, and crickets, nothing happens. And then you expect other people to look at this and not be incentivized to do their own. Think about the way the violent patterns in our elections have gone on. And this is not just about the 2019 elections. It's been a trend since 2003. It's just that it gets worse each time. If you look at the ACLED or NST databases, you will find that after every election, the violence in Nigeria becomes more democratized. I think it's very important to note this, because so people keep saying, oh, for example, that we don't hear news about this, about things like headsmen or this or that. We don't hear them again. I can assure you, we track the databases. I can assure you these things are still happening. It's just that unfortunately, 2 things: normalization, and then people by news fatigue. That's the expression. People pushing those things to the back of their minds. But they are still happening. Arms are in circulation in this country, and it's getting easier and easier for people to get those arms. We have a problem brewing.
All right, thank you. Let me pose Bengus' question. He says the good thing is that Amosun turned the ammunitions in when he was about to leave office. What if he hadn't turned them in?
I think.
Actually, I wanted you to react to that.
We agreed that he turned them in after the report came out.
Yes. Timing.
If the report hadn't come out, and you remember the first report came out, I think about 2 months after he left office.
Yeah.
That was when the the gist of that he turned them in started coming out. So if that had not happened, would he have turned them in?
All right. Thank you.
Good question. The Guardian newspaper reports that visa on arrival policy not for victimization immigration clarifies. What do you make of this clarification? Because they're saying it's not found as social media suggested, because people rallied with the rumors that it was an ethnic or religious, it had an undertone
Yeah.
of such.
So what social media was speculating was that it was allegedly to allow Africans from Muslim nations to come into Nigeria without visas. And it's interesting to me because the president's stance was, we heard him talk about it again when he was outside Nigeria, somewhere in Egypt, and he mentioned that. And one of the key reasons is primarily to encourage what we know about ECOWAS, free trade or movement of people from place to place, and yada yada yada. It's also very interesting that people will start to circulate that it's only for people who are from Muslim countries, because of the 54 countries in Africa, like the question is how many other non-Muslim countries exist, and how many of them will have their nationals come into Nigeria. Maybe you can get a poll from the NIS to know how many people from all these non-Muslim countries have come to Nigeria. So we understand that it is not only Muslim Africans that come into Nigeria. So it's probably a good thing that they've talked about it, but a lot of people have their fingers crossed, because again, capacity is what we will see. Do we have the capacity to do this visa on arrival steadily? Because if you go to visa on arrival nations, it doesn't take so long. You get there, the queue is there, you pay whatever sum it is you're supposed to pay, and voila, there isn't so much as with delays. So we understand that people are skeptical about it. People, again, are skeptical about its timing. But to think that it's just to encourage non-Muslim nationals to come to Nigeria, where is the proof? What proof do you have? So if you don't have cogent proof, it is again speculations. It might just be practice. Maybe some people know it's as practice, but proof, and that's what it is, especially for this context, this show. You need proof, and since we don't have that proof, it's just
but why do you have
social media.
to show proof? I mean, it's almost as if you're giving a little credibility.
No,
to
if you're giving proof, then it means that I will come here and say, oh, what's this NIS boss or whoever is responding to this statement is saying is some bollocks, because reality is that have you seen so and so? Have you seen the data that is showing that it's only most people from Muslim countries are applying or coming into the country? But since we don't have it, we're all just going to.
I think that we need to acknowledge the fact that literacy is a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people out there who actually believe that a certain high level government official is dead and replaced by a clone.
Yeah.
People actually believe that. People next door to you. So I mean,
it just buttresses the level of ignorance. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not just ignorance. Ignorance is ignorance is a massive problem here. But for me, the bigger problem is the fact that we're a completely low trust society. And the trust has broken down even more, such that every single move, and the government does not help, to be honest, every single move by this government is second guessed. And part of it is because of the government's attitude. So the government has to actually learn, give and take as well. If the president hadn't done that 97.5% thing 4 years ago, we would have been having different conversations now. Trust is gone.
That's right.
It needs to be rebuilt.
I agree totally. Chika Agina from Marina says the cry of the NSC over circulation of light weapons in Nigeria is nothing but playing to the gallery. What has happened to Amos Yari and co? The way out of this is for the government to engage the teeming youth. December 31 minimum wage the negotiation deadline is looming, but the Punch reports that Oyo, Rivers, Kwara, Gombe, others have still failed to raise panels, and this is what is stalling this process.
Yeah, it's like, how are we still here? And I feel like the very first two lines just upset me. We're still waiting for panels to be set up. Are we really serious? Something that was signed into law in April this year, and the back and forth, the labor unions had given them deadlines, and then negotiations had started. So if you read the entire stretch, I think there's just about a state of all the states that were mentioned here in this report: Ogun, Osun, Plateau State, Cross River, Kwara State, Anambra State, Rivers State, Sokoto State, Oyo State, only one. Benue is the only one that the union claims has constituted its committee to meet the state government. A lot of these trade unions, labor unions in this state are saying clearly they have written to the state government and nothing has come forward. And you ask yourself, what exactly is going on? Now the labor has given, they have a 2-week window. So there's a presupposition that we will be starting off 2020 with a strike action. So, you know, it's worrying to me. And the conversation is not, again, can they afford it? They can't afford it. We've been through all of that. So we're here and we're waiting for you people to constitute committees. What exactly are the committees supposed to do? Are they supposed to implement what already has been signed into law? Are they supposed to serve as a watchdog for places or ministries or departments or whatever that do not implement this? The money doesn't come into the head of the MDAs. It goes directly from source. So you get your money paid into your bank account. So it raises a lot of questions, but again, it's nauseating to me as a person. And I'm worried that at the start of January that has 96 weeks, we're probably going to see strike action. And you wonder, it doesn't make so much sense to the people in Gombe, because that's a presupposition that we see and we have. But to the everyday person, to the person who is a civil servant and has children going to school, come on.
Thank you very much, Adenike.
All right, Lukman from Bagada says there are more uneducated people in Nigeria, hence the prevalence of strained views and electoral choices. More needs to be done to open up people's minds and ultimately move the nation forward. God help us all, always seems to be no way. I thank you very much for your comments. Move on to our next headline here. Justin, federal government eyes $23 trillion emerging markets funds to combat climate change. Just to remind us that the federal government had in 2015 signed the Paris Agreement that committed the country to nationally determined contribution which aims at combating climate change by 2030. And one of the challenges highlighted in this report is that they haven't had the opportunity to access funds. So this is, a good news with regards to that. Please take us to the story.
No, it's not.
Why is it not a good news?
It's not good news. It's not good news. And let me tell you why.
Please tell me
So
why.
whenever there's an issue that involves, at the international level, that involves intervention funds, our typical MO is to go through the motions, talk the talk, take the money, and back to business as usual. The battle against climate change actually begins at a very macro level. I can tell you for free that from a government, from the government's disposition, right?
Yeah.
They really couldn't be bothered. I mean, we had a deputy senate president some months ago say, no, we will not allow electric vehicles in Nigeria because we're an oil producing company. That's all you need to know about our attitude towards climate change, right? But let me bring it back to the story. So there's $23 trillion in climate change intervention funds available, and everybody is excited and jumping up and down. But hey, excuse me for a second. We last year or 2 years ago increased tariff on solar panels in this country. And we're talking climate change. From my teenage years, we've been talking about stopping gas flaring, gas harnessing projects and all that, about taxing the oil producing companies to ensure that they make the necessary investments in reducing gas flaring. It still hasn't happened. We're still flaring gas, right? All of the gas policies that should have stopped it simply haven't happened because the will to do is not there. We've actually had a story here where we analyze it. I think I actually took that story where it's cheaper for the oil companies to pay the fines that we've levied on gas flaring than to actually make the investment on flaring. That tells me our attitude to climate change. Okay, we like banning stuff, right? Let me tell you some few things that we could ban. Incandescent bulbs. It's as simple as that. That's how it starts. Ban incandescent bulbs, force people to use energy efficient lighting at home. I was part of a project recently, an 18-floor tower, and at design stage, when we were reviewing, the architect and the designers had included fluorescent lighting. And I said, are you guys smoking something cheap? 18 floors of fluorescent lighting. Are you okay? Do you know the energy drain? Do you know the carbon footprint you're creating? And we changed it to LED lighting. Okay, let's talk about, now that I talk about carbon emissions, do we have a way in this country of tracking carbon emissions?
No.
Do we have a carbon tax? No. but you're jumping up and down because they're
Please
20
don't mention
trillion.
the T word, whatever you do.
Oh, a breathing tax is coming. You haven't heard. A breathing tax is coming. You haven't heard. So yeah, there's this money available, and trust me, the administration is going to do everything they can because we are hungry for money right now to get their hands on this money. But
Right.
it saddens me to know that,
It wouldn't be used. So the challenge is will it be used
like
judiciously?
Tata said, trust issues. I have zero trust on this matter.
All right, thank you very much. I think it boils down to education, like we mentioned earlier on. A lot of people are not even aware of what climate change is, how it impacts.
Where
what
are the
impact
radio
is.
jingles? Where are the people's? Where's the sensitization program?
All right, thank you very much. Challenge accepted. Cheta, let's go on to our next story.
Speaking
Senate
of trust issues,
Senate will approve $30 billion. $30 billion loan request from Buhari, says Lawan from Guardian newspaper. Please take us through this story.
yeah. Speaking of trust issues, how do you like your chains? Gold, bronze, iron?
I like them around my neck and expensive. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Touche.
I mean, there's nothing that says you can't be digging the fields with an expensive chain. around.
Yes, Yoruba get about shit.
Go on.
So the president has revived the loan request that was turned down by the last session of the National Assembly, and one of the media aides to the president, Adjuri Ngelale, released a list of projects a few weeks ago. That these are the projects that they want to use the $30 billion loan to do. And Lawan's reason for giving this approval in principle, even before the Senate has sat on it, is that they've given a detailed list. So here are some of the things from the detailed list. Lagos Ibadan Kano Rail to be completed. Lagos Calabar Port Harcourt Maiduguri Rail to start. Mambila Power Project to start. Complete ongoing power projects, complete airport modernization projects, complete second Niger Bridge, Warri Port to start, digitization of NTA for $500 million. Now, this NTA thing is the one that raised a lot of antenna immediately, because just 4 years ago, the Director General of the NTA at the time said that a complete digitization of the NTA plus a total revamp of the entire NTA will cost $30 million. So suddenly, in 4 years, we've added $470 million to it.
They'll tell you his exchange rate now.
It still doesn't add up.
Okay.
Cheta, go ahead.
That was to beat him.
Now, the second Niger Bridge, I mean, everybody knows that I follow that one very closely because I'm from there.
Yeah.
They've told us that they've completed payments for it and that it's just for Julius Berger to finish the thing and the thing will be ready for commissioning. Is it 2022? They said that'll be 2023. Help me now.
That was around
Suddenly it is part of the list.
Yes, yeah.
See,
Variation.
these two alone put a question mark on the entire thing.
True.
Before we start asking all the other questions, who are we borrowing from? What tenure? What are the conditions of the loan? What are the interest rates? Because the truth of the matter is, especially when you consider the fact that Fitch, Moody's, everybody has downgraded us to junk status, in short, lower than junk status in terms of
Meaning we have to borrow at a
rating.
premium.
It will mean that we'll have to borrow at a premium. The last Euro bond that we did, that one of the 30-year tenures is at 12% or something. Who will pay?
All right. Thank you very much.
The children in
Unfortunately,
Canada.
I have to move on from this story, and I'll just mention the last two stories because of our time, and then take some comments before we go. Mainly, we'll probably debate on this or talk about this tomorrow in detail if it happens. Exclusive from Premium Times: Buhari to sign 2020 budget on Tuesday. That's today. National Assembly to begin debate on PIB Electoral Amendment Bill in January from Daily Times. For the first story, probably if it does happen today, we will talk about it tomorrow.
All right, Moluka Sanda on YouTube says, I wonder if China subscribes to the Paris Agreement. The truth is, we just want money. Nigeria does not care about climate change, despite the fact that Port Harcourt is covered in soot today. Very valid point there. Chikagina says, so the government is eyeing part of the $23 trillion investment in climate change when we still flare large parts of our gas, when most of the rural communities still rely on firewood to cook, and 70% of our power still comes from generators with high concentration of smoke. I laugh in Swahili. And this is from Ogbomachido. It says, good morning. All the money borrowed by Buhari so far, what has he used that for? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Boma Chidoze. Thanks to everyone who sent in comments, even for those that we couldn't take. We're really grateful. Thanks to our analysts. Thank you, Adenike Oyetunde on Twitter. Thank you, Justin at Justin EJ on Twitter. And thanks, Cheta at Checkstar on Twitter.
I want to call the attention of security agencies to please pay attention to their Gudasuri area. We've gotten a few reports this morning that they're experiencing sporadic gunshots. They can hear.
Yeah. There's a gang war going on.
There's a gang war, yeah, a cult clash that's going on as well.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good morning. At 8:15, we're back for the Grapevine 981.